A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
Alright, welcome back to Honored Madman. Today we've got a bite-sized lore entry, which we haven't done really in a while, and that's mainly because I like doing the longer videos, and in many ways this is sort of a prequel to the upcoming Aldea video that I'm doing. I'm not sure if it'll come out next because I have these other ones that are very near being finished that might come out next, but the Aldea one is close. With that being said though, this is about one of Aldea's various experiments, or alleged ones, one of my favorites at least. So if you played Dark Souls 2, then you're more than likely affiliated with the Lion Warriors, who are more often than not petrified. Aside from that, they carry big wooden shields and extremely well crafted double-bladed axes. They also come in two different flavors, although one is far more rare than the other, the Black Mane and the Gold Mane. Now the Gold Mane's so rare that there's only one in the game and he doesn't respawn, making his red lion cape a truly rare item. Now one thing that's worth mentioning is that the only Gold Mane one we meet in the game is not petrified, so I like to believe he's the reason some of the lion men have been unpetrified. And when we meet him, he's in the process of working to free some more of his brothers from their Dr. Stone style prison. Not much that backs it, just a fun theory. So not much is known about these beastmen. And the only real lore we can find out about from these guys comes from their very, rather risque set and their weapons. And they don't really tell us much, they just tell us that the lion men hate humans and, they generally keep to themselves, and they also despise their own appearance. While their outfits and armor and their little braids and dreadlocks in their hair seem quite primitive, their weapons are the farthest thing from it. In fact, they're finely crafted steel axes that are said to cut extremely smoothly. Now obviously these axes imply that the Lion Clansmen are more than just a bunch of primitive, vulgar beasts, and if nothing else possess a high enough intelligence to craft such an axe. Well, either that or they weren't always lions. So aside from the axe, the Lion Clan warriors also wield a unique shield. It looks primitive enough like any wooden shield, but it was actually reinforced with metal and it was light yet sturdy. Now during the events of Dark Souls 2, the design on the shield was believed to be some sort of religious symbol, but that we'll presumably never know to what gods these, mysterious beasts answer to. Well, Dark Souls 3 sort of gave us an answer to that. Out of all the pieces of the Lion Warriors kit, the only thing that made it so far to Dark Souls 3 was the shield, and it's now known as the War God wooden shield. Now it's clearly the same exact shield, but it's got a brand new description. The bizarre pattern featured on the shield is the mark of a mad god, revered as a god of war in remote regions. Now what place is both a remote and isolated region and has lion-themed warriors? Well, if you said Ferosa, which is a land known for its legendary warriors and heroes, such a place was the homeland of many famous warriors, people like the Old Ivory King, Vengarl himself, and most importantly the famous Lion Knights, who you might know from the Dark Souls 2 trailers, the cover boy basically. Or if you haven't played Dark Souls 2, you know him as Lion Knight Albert, the guy who will help you with Vort, but that also tries to gank you when you reach the archives. So the Ferosan Lion Knights were basically the toughest knights from the toughest region, and their legacy was pretty clearly preserved even after the destruction of their homeland. Now they were of course feared for their nimble, two-handed swordplay, which is a reference to the power stancing mechanic of Dark Souls 2, but more importantly their armor itself. It was designed in honor of their god, a legendary god of war named Farum, or Faram. You guys know at this point how I am with pronouncing some of these words. Now whether or not Farum and the Nameless King are the same person, that's a whole different story that we're not going to get into today. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch to assume that the god mentioned in the Lion Clan warrior shield, who is described as a god of war, and the god mentioned in the Farum set, who is also referred to as a god of war, could in fact be the very same being. But does that prove that the Lion Knights became the Lion Clan warriors? No, not really. But I do think it opens the door more than wide enough to speculate. So the description on their outfits describe them as an offshoot race with no ties to humans. It further goes on to describe them as a bunch of violent brutes who would murder anyone with the curious notion of approaching them. Now it ends the description with the Lion's clansmen seem to despise their own looks as they hate being seen. And my interpretation of this whole description seems to be that the Lion Clansmen want nothing to do with humans. They won't talk to them, they won't trade with them, they'll only murder them if you happen to be stupid enough to walk up to one of these hulking lions and try to be friends with it. Of course they're going to chop you in half. I mean, what'd you expect? But I think the reason they murder anybody who comes near them is specifically because they hate being seen. They hate people seeing what they've become. Now, I know some people might interpret that line about them having no ties to humans to indicate that they're not originally humans or have no genetic links to humans, but I just think the use of the word ties in that means, like, diplomatic and not genealogical or whatever the word would be. But that's just my interpretation of the description. So the fact that they hate being seen by humans and will murder anybody who will come near them and hate, their own appearances, it leads me to believe that they more than likely used to be human. And if they used to be a war god worshipping race of humans, then that leads me to believe that they had to have been the remnants of the Feroce and Lion Knights. I mean, we know that some of them made it to Dranlake. I mean, look at the Dark Souls 2 trailer. Also, we find the complete set in Dranlake Castle, so we know at least one Lion Knight made it that far. What I think happened was that they came to Dranlake and Aldia captured a good amount of them. I mean, these Lion Knights were prized for their fierceness and unique sword fighting and probably their durability as well. That would make them perfect test subjects for someone like Aldia. And after their transformation, when Aldia no longer had any use for them, he just released them into the Shaded Woods. I guess they should be thankful that he didn't chuck them down into the gutter like so many other of his forgotten toys. Now, the Lion Clan was formidable warriors, so they just as likely could have escaped on their own after Aldia turned himself into a flaming, incorporeal tree. I doubt it would have been very hard for the Lion Warriors to fight through the Dragon Acolytes and the ogres and whatnot. They would have made short work of them. So that could also explain how they got loose. The abrupt appearance of the Lion Men in the world is something that's talked about in the description of the Lion Clan Mage's robe, which once again describes them as an offshoot race, but goes a step further by mentioning that they appear in the historical records quite abruptly, as if one day they climbed up out of the depths of the very earth itself. So maybe they were chucked down into the gutter and they climbed their way out. This, combined with the fact that their weapons require significant intelligence to make, almost confirms that they were experiments or test subjects by Lord Aldia. Now, whether they escaped from Aldia's keep directly or climbed out of the literal earth itself from the gutter, what they did next remained the same. After this point, I think that they began forging their weapons and making their little makeshift suits of armor, all the while hating what they've become, but not hating themselves enough to end it all. They were still warriors, they wanted a warrior's death, and they figure if they just attack anybody who comes near them, they're more than likely to eventually get a warrior's death that way. At least, that's how it seems to me. So they made themselves some armor and some weapons and these rudimentary but sturdy wooden shield with an emblem of their war god painted on it as a way to help them not forget who they are. They were originally a group of some of the most fierce and prized knights on the entire planet of Dark Souls, only for them to be reduced to a offshoot race of beast folk mistaken for primitive savages more often than not. It's truly a sad fate. So as for why almost all of them are petrified, it's either got to be the curse-filled vases, which themselves could be the leftovers of some sort of cursed mining operation, or, and more likely, it could be the medium to large-sized den of basilisks that just so happen to be the lion people's new neighbors. Now, the gold-maned lion guy seems to be a bit more resistant to the curse than his black-maned brethren, as he's the only one currently not turned to stone. And I really like the idea that he led his mutated men up from the depths of the gutter to find some form of peace in the Shaded Woods, only for them all to turn to stone and him to have to figure something out yet again. In this case, finding those mysterious fragrant branches of yore and freeing the stoned lion men. Sort of a Dr. Stone style situation. Although if he doesn't do anything about those basilisks, he's going to have the same problem on his hands all over again. Just a fun little theory I thought I'd end things on. But I wanted to keep this as bite-sized as I can, and we're already at like 7 minutes, so I think that's all I needed to say about the transformation of Lion Knights into Lion Clan warriors. But if there's anything I missed or got wrong, please let me know in the comments. And as always, if you liked the video, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on and on and on about these various video game topics, then please consider subscribing. We had a little bit of an absence for a little over a week there. I got sick for a little bit, and then my computer stopped detecting Wi-Fi. It was a whole thing, but it's all fixed now. But let's stop rambling and have our outro, then we'll talk about what's going to be coming out in the next week or so. Got some good stuff planned. So aside from the Aldia video that this video is sort of a prequel of, I've been working on a few at a time. I know I said I wouldn't do that, but I always wind up doing it. So the next one will probably be about the most important DLC of the Dark Souls timeline, you know, at least impact wise. And I've also got another video about the various rats of all the From Software games and the purpose they serve. You know, the lore of the rats, if you will. And the other Soulsian one I've been working on is sort of like a mystery video, but that one could come out before the other two, or it come out after, or maybe in between, who knows. But for now, it's a mystery video. All I can say is that it has to do with Dark Souls 2, and I think I've taken up enough of your time with my final thoughts section. So as always, you guys have a good one, and I'll be seeing you real soon. Be safe.